welcome. Today on the podcast, we have Lindsey Ray with us, and I'll pass it over to Lisa to give her a little introduction.
Yay, we're so happy you're here, Lindsey. Okay, so Lindsey Ray is a very remarkable human being. She's a singer, songwriter, musician, and a producer, and her credits are wild. So she has written songs for Mariah Carey, so cool, Demi Lovato, Tiesto, and also Calgary's own Jocelyn Alice, which is how we met. Also, in addition to writing songs, she has 3 of her own artist projects. So Lindsey Ray, and then we got Rayelle and Olly Anna. Olly Anna is the one that you write and produce all of the music, right?
Well, I started it that way. I don't anymore. I have other people that produce now. But yeah, in the beginning, it was 100% me.
Right. Very cool. So you have probably heard Lindsey's music from one of those artists in a bunch of different places. They get a lot of placements in commercials and ads, and also TV shows and trailers and movies. So some of the ad placements that she's gotten are like McDonald's and Target, T-Mobile. Actually, last year was a really cool one. She got an international placement for Samsung's new mobile phone. So we saw her ads popping up all over the world, which was wild. And then she's also been on a bunch of TV shows, including So You Think You Can Dance and Grey's Anatomy, which is so cool, and Love Island. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Lindsey, can you tell? So we are so pumped to have you and just ready to pick your brain about your life.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for asking me.
That's awesome. Let's just get into it. To start us off, would you be able to give our viewers kind of an introduction to what you do? So what's your role in the industry, and how did you get into it?
Well, so currently today, my role, I would say, is writer, artist, singer, producer. In the beginning, like when I was in high school, I was just focusing on trying to be a singer. So I wasn't writing songs yet. I'm from Maine originally, so a really small town. I used to go to New York City all the time and work with this production company there when I was in high school. And for a long time, I just thought that I would be a singer and other people would write songs for me. And then in my early 20s, I started getting the bug to want to start writing, and I had a mentor that encouraged me to do so. So I started writing at about 23, and then I moved to Los Angeles at the age of 25 and signed my first record deal, this little indie label out of New York. And that was like really when I sort of got into the whole sync thing that I'm doing now, that I had a Target commercial that year, the summer of 2008. And so in the years that I lived in LA, I wrote for other artists like Jocelyn Alice, like Lisa mentioned, and just basically whoever would cut my songs. And then it wasn't until I got to be about, I think, maybe 31 or 32. So I'm 37 now. So about 5 years ago, I started writing for myself as an artist again. And it started with a band called Farmdale that I had with an ex-boyfriend at the time. And then I started my Rayelle project, and then my Olly Anna project. And most recently, I started releasing music under my main name, Lindsey Ray, again. In the last year, I started that again. So yeah, I've kind of been all over the place over the years, and that's just I'm one of those people that I think gets maybe bored or something, and then I just kind of have to switch it up and try something new. So anyway, currently, this is what I'm doing.
Sorry, I'm curious a little bit more about, you said you wrote songs for people like Jocelyn Alice, Mariah Carey, Demi Lovato. How did you get those? Was it through networking that you made those connections, or was it more through a label or a management company that you were able to connect that way?
That's a good question, because it's sort of all of the above. I mean, when I first moved to LA, I was signed to a publishing deal at the time, so I was meeting people that way, just lots of co-writes. So I did network with a lot of people, and I met Jocelyn through actually my boyfriend at the time, who was a producer that was working with her, and he just said, "Hey, can you come write with this artist?" And I said, "Sure." And then she and I hit it off, and the rest is history. We just stayed friends and kept writing over the years. The Mariah Carey thing came about because a friend of mine who was a songwriter she happened to take a meeting with Disney and they were looking for music for this movie that they were working on. And she called me and said, hey, do you want to try writing this with me? So I didn't know that it was going to be Mariah Carey singing it. We were just writing a song for a movie, and we knew that if we got the song in the movie that Disney was going to find a major artist to record it, but we had no idea who it was going to be. And that was really fun when we found out that it was Mariah Carey. That was pretty crazy. And then the Demi Lovato thing happened because the producer that I wrote that song with, he happened to have a meeting with Demi Lovato's A&R guy, like I think the week after we wrote it. It was something really fast where like we wrote the song, and then a week later I got a call and they said, hey, Demi's A&R loves this. They think it's the one song that's missing on her album. She's going to record it next week. Like it just,
Wow.
yeah, that was kind of crazy. So, but I would say in general, yeah, it's all from networking pretty much.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, very cool. And so some of these instances you're in the room writing with artists, but sometimes you're not.
Yeah.
How does that kind of work?
Yeah, I would say most of the time in my history of having songs cut, I haven't been in the room with people. It's been a song that I wrote with, somebody else, and then it got pitched by either my management at the time or a publishing company or the publishing company of the writer that I'm working with, or, it's usually that. But, nowadays I feel like the people that I write with are my friends that are artists. So, when I write with Jocelyn, we always write in the room together. I'm not pitching her music. So it just kind of depends on, I guess, if you have that connection already. If you have the relationship, then it's always better to be in the room with the artist, because then you can, you have a better shot, number one, of them recording the song, but you can also talk to them about where they're at in their life, and you can pull from that and know what to write. And I prefer that. If I had to choose, I would always want to be in the room with the artist.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask a little bit more, what would be your advice for young artists and bands who are looking to co-write more? Would you recommend that they start out networking with people that are at their same level and start out that way? And how do you recommend that they start working with musicians that are at the next level?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's important to always start just kind of where you're at. Everyone that is reachable to you, that you can already make contact with, like, use each other and learn from each other. There's so much that you can learn from co-writing. So, and I think that's a really good point to make too, because I think about that all the time. I feel like people get discouraged and think, oh, I need to write with Greg Wells or somebody that's like this huge songwriter producer that like, I can't even get to him, and I know him, but like, he's not gonna write with me right now. So, you just kind of have to accept where you're at and work with what you have. And then over time, you build your catalog and you get better. And then honestly, word of mouth is a huge thing in this industry. Like if you're good at what you do and you're easy to work with and you're talented, people are going to talk. So that someone's going to say to their friend, oh, you should write with them. And then all of a sudden it just kind of starts happening in a really natural way. And then, eventually if you have a manager or a publishing company with you, then that helps a lot too. But in the early stages, yeah, just write with as many people as you can, and that that you admire. I mean, if you see somebody on Instagram and you can see that they're kind of the same age as you and maybe same level of experience, there's no harm in reaching out and just seeing if they're interested in collaborating.
Yeah, that's some great advice.
So Lindsey, if you're writing without the artist in the room, like, what's the kind of inspiration for where the songs are coming from? Are you drawing for them from yourself? Are you thinking about someone else, or writing for specifically somebody?
Well, now that I'm a little bit more experienced, I know that the best way to do it is to write as though you are the artist, write from what you know, because in the early years of living in LA, when I was trying to get pop cuts, I really was honestly just trying to, like, melodically, I could come up with something that was hooky, but lyrically, I was like, I don't know what the radio wants. And then I would hear something and I would sort of like think, I was always grasping at writing what I thought somebody wanted me to write. And I think the reason those songs didn't end up working and in my opinion weren't that great is because there was nothing real about it. It has to come from a real place. So yeah, so that's why, like, when I'm writing with an artist, it's easier because I can know what's going on with them, and then I can relate that to when I've been in that position, so it's easier to do it. And when I'm alone, even with all of my sync music, even though that that type of music tends to be a little more surface level, if you will, lyrically. It's not necessarily like bearing your heart, you know, they kind of are happy songs, but everything I ever say in any song I write, I mean it. Like I feel it, and I have to, otherwise I'm not going to have fun doing it. So yeah, I think it's really important to tap into what your actual truth is as a person, what your experience is and what you feel and how you view things.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Awesome. So Lindsay, we've been talking a lot about syncs and publishing and licensing and that kind of stuff, but I think that there's a lot of like young artists and actually just artists all over, like with all different levels of experience that don't really have a lot of knowledge about that particular side of the industry, or even know what it is or how to land stuff on shows or commercials or anything. So can you just break down that a little bit for us?
Yeah. So that, so sync basically is short for synchronization. It's sync licensing. It's when your music is used on film or TV or in a commercial or something like that. Anything basically other than radio or Spotify. And the way that normally happens is, there's music supervisors that work for the TV shows or for different companies like Adidas or Nike, right? So there's like a person that works for them that goes out and is looking for music for the new advertisement that's coming. And then those people have relationships with people at licensing companies or directly with artists, but most of the time I think it's with a licensing company. So they'll go to them and say, hey, we have a Samsung commercial coming out next year and we want something upbeat and something, they'll give some general idea of what they're looking for. And then I'm sure a number of companies are pitching them music and saying, okay, here's all the music we have in our company from people that are signed to us making music. And we're going to send everything that we think is close to what you're looking for. And then they narrow it down and they pick a song and then they go back and forth and negotiate. And then if you're lucky, then your song kind of gets picked. So for me, the way it's worked is that I do work with a licensing company based out of Los Angeles called Secret Road. I don't have the direct relationships with music supervisors. I have a few now because I've been doing it for a long time. But in the beginning, I really relied heavily on my publisher back in the day. And then nowadays, my licensing company to be the ones pitching that. So if you don't have one of those currently, I think it is definitely a little bit harder. It's not impossible. Nothing's impossible. I think if you, if you're releasing music and you get lucky and it's one of those things that like lands on a TikTok, someone big uses it and all of a sudden people are hearing it. If you get exposure to the point where a music supervisor or a company hears your song and likes it, then they're going to reach out directly to you. So that's one way. You can just release music and sort of do your best to get it in people's ears so that it gets heard. I think the easier way to go about that would be to just, to build a catalog, maybe have at least 5 songs that you feel like are really licensable, and then start submitting and reaching out. You can Google licensing companies and there's tons of them. All the major publishing companies also have sync departments now, because that's a really, that's now become sort of a thing that every company wants to do because they see the value in it. It's these days with sales of music going down and Spotify not paying very much. If you're not a writer that has a big hit song on the radio, it's really hard to make a living. And sync is a way that you can sort of, it's a lane where you can still make money, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it works out really well for somebody like me because I don't have a manager. I don't have a publishing company right now. So I rely pretty heavily on my licensing company. And sorry, that was a really long answer. I hope that explained it.
No, that was perfect. Yes, thank you.
Awesome. It sounds like from your experience, what I'm hearing is that the song usually comes first and then that's pitched to different companies. But does it ever work the other way where a company will come to an artist or a company and ask for a song to be written for a specific purpose?
Yeah, that does happen sometimes. It's, for me anyway, in my experience, that's been, that's only happened a couple of times. I did have Penney come to me years ago, maybe in 2015 or 16, and ask me to write something for their spring campaign. But even then, they didn't say, hey, we want you to write this and whatever you write, we'll use it. They went to a number of artists and said, we want you guys to write something that will work for spring. And then they picked whatever, they wanted. So I've done that a couple of times, but yeah, most of the time for me, I'm just writing songs. having fun and just playing in the studio or playing with whoever I'm with and coming up with bass lines and just writing stuff that I feel like I think is fun and hooky and whatever sort of comes to me. And then I give it to my company and I just cross my fingers and hope that they can find somewhere or that somebody else will like it. I mean, because even if the company that I give it to likes it, that doesn't really matter. I mean, they have to then convince other people to use it. So it's a process, but yeah, I think, I mean, I sort of think with everything in this business, and like I said before, like the older and more, you know, the longer I've been doing it, I've realized that the secret sauce is really just enjoying what you're doing. It really absolutely is. And that sounds so simple, but it's absolutely the truth, because the energy gets translated into the music. So if you're having fun and you believe what you're saying and you're really feeling it, that's going to translate. People are going to feel that when they hear it. Whereas if you're reaching and you're trying to be something that you're not, and you're kind of having to like fake it, it doesn't come through as authentically. And I really believe that just doesn't reach people, because I've done it both ways. And I can tell you that the more fun I have and the more I allow myself to feel like a little kid almost, and just like I'm playing, the more success I've had.
Wow, yeah. For a young artist or band who's just starting out, like you said, without a licensing company, it might be challenging, but what are some realistic steps or things that a young artist or band could do to kind of DIY it themselves and reach out to try and get sync placements?
I mean, I really think the best thing to do is kind of, you know, research, like pay attention to whatever your favorite show is that you're watching and the music that's in the show. There's a website called TuneFind that often will list what music was used in every episode of every show and movie. And you start to notice like there's certain people that will, you know, their music will get used a lot, and then maybe go and like look them up, like go to my website or go to my Spotify page as Rayelle and just kind of research and listen to the songs that are getting placed. And then, you know, you can start to see a pattern of like, oh, well, I can see maybe why this type of thing is working. You know, I mean, that's what I did in the very beginning. Nobody taught me how to write for sync or said, hey, you just have to do this, because unfortunately nothing in the music industry is that easy. There's no like recipe. It's just, you know, I just started to kind of figure out there were certain trends. Like there were things that up-tempo gets used a lot in a commercial. If you see an ad and they're like, oh, it's a sale this weekend for Memorial Day. I mean, it's not going to be a sad song, right? It's going to be something up-tempo. It's going to feel good. There's going to be hooky oohs or lahs or things like that. So if you're just starting out, I would say like enjoy the fact that you're in a position where you're a sponge right now, and like your job is just to soak it up. Just go and listen to everything and dissect what it is that you like about it or whatnot, and try things and just play and just have fun. And then, you know, once you get to a point where you think you have something pretty good, I would start reaching out to companies, and, you know, they might not get back to you. It's very possible that they might not get back to you. And then you just got to keep trying, or go to somebody that you do maybe know is a little more experienced than you in the business and try to get some feedback and just get some, you know, because everybody has somebody that they can look up to. I feel like there's always that, right? There's always like these levels in the business. So just getting honest feedback from people and then digging back in and just putting in the work, really. That's my best advice, because at the end of the day, it's not like you figure something out at some point and then it's just easy. Like that's just, at least not in my experience. It's just, I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly evolving and having to change with the times, and just learn from everybody that I work with. I'm constantly learning, and then do the same, like do things like this and try to give back and remember where you started and try to help guide other people and help bring them up too.
For sure. Okay,
so man, it sounds like you have been evolving. And did you dream up any of this when you were a teenager, thinking about becoming a singer and an artist?
Yeah, I mean, not exactly like this. My dream when I was little was, you know, kind of being like I don't know, like Beyonce or something, right? Like I wanted to be touring the world and be on stage, and I wanted to be singing to crowds of people. That was always the dream. And I'll be honest, I mean, it still is. There are still times that I'm like, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's not too late. It could happen. I don't know. I don't think that will ever really fully go away. But so I guess the initial dream kind of shifted. But really what I realized the older I got was that as long as I'm able to do this and make music and enjoy what I'm doing every day and wake up without that feeling of dread that I'm going to do something I don't like every morning I genuinely wake up and I'm like, woo, I'm excited to see what happens and what I can come up with. And maybe it'll be nothing. And certainly there are days where I'm incredibly discouraged still. And I feel like, oh my God, I'm so terrible. I've lost it. I never had it, or whatever it is. And then the next day you come back and you just keep showing up. It's like you almost have to be a little, I don't know what the word is, I guess stubborn, and also just one of those people that just a glutton for punishment or something. And if you really love it, you will keep doing it. And there's nothing that will make you stop. And that is sort of your secret weapon, honestly, because the more you keep showing up, the more chances you have of something hitting and something working and something clicking. And then it just, it feels like it's going slow, but someday you look back, when I look back now at my early 20s, when I was a wedding singer, for example, I just can't believe where I am. I can't believe that I made it from there to here. And then it gets me so excited about all the other places that, could be ahead of me that I don't know where they are. So I don't even really necessarily aim for anything anymore in the same way that I did at 5 years old, thinking I want to, the goal now is just to stay in the business and to stay creative and to keep being able to, do the thing that I love.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So speaking of your journey, sorry, Maddie, I just have one more burning question. You kind of a couple of years ago decided to start producing your own music. Yeah. Right? How many years ago was that?
I think it was 2017.
Okay. So tell us your journey about getting into that world where you're creating your own tracks and building everything and programming drums. And there are very few female music producers out there. And so why did you start doing that? And how did it look for you?
Well, I mean, it's funny when I think back on it now, I think there were signs there the whole way, because even when I wasn't producing, when I was in the studio with producers, I was always very inquisitive and kind of looking over their shoulder and watching what they were doing and asking why they were doing it that way. And I always had ideas too about well, I want the horn line to go like this, or, I want this to be the background. So in a sense, I was sort of producing before I knew I was producing. I just didn't know that's what that was. I just thought I was, too involved or something. And then I did have some producers that were like, I got this. I'm like, and then so as I got older, I started playing around with my ex-boyfriend back in the day. I mean, back in 2015, he and I had a band called Farmdale, and we started producing together. He was doing the bulk of it in the beginning, but he was learning how to use Logic and was teaching me everything that he learned. So we were very much doing it together. And then again, I just kind of I tend to be fairly opinionated, I think. So I used to kind of be like, get out of here, I want to mix this one. So I would mix it, and I didn't know what I was doing when I was mixing. I just used my ears and said, no, I want it, I think it needs to be this, or that needs, so a lot of it was sort of intuitive, and it just kind of happened. And then but in terms of producing on my own, I was terrified to do it. And I only did it because the company I'm signed to reached out to me one day and said, hey, some company was looking for a song, and they said, we want something that's kind of a replacement track for an MIA song called Bad Girls, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And I wanted this guy to do it with me. And he said, no, I'm too busy. You can just go do it yourself. And so I only had 24 hours. I was on a time crunch. I didn't want to say no, even though I knew I didn't know what I was doing. I just figured, well, I know enough at this point about how to use Logic. I'm just going to go upstairs and make a beat and see what happens. And I did.
Oh my God.
And I didn't get the thing that I was going for, but I did create a song in 24 hours. And when I turned it into the company, they came back and said, hey, this is really good. We really like this, actually. And it didn't sound like anything I had ever done before. And they said, we think you should do more. And I was like, okay. So I started doing more. And then all of a sudden I had maybe 5 songs, and they said, hey, this is all starting to sound really like a project. It sounds like one thing, and it doesn't sound like anything else you're doing. So that's why I created a name, and I called it Olly Anna. And who knows why I called it that? I really don't know. It's like I saw it in my head on a blackboard. That sounds weird, but I remember seeing the name and I was like, Olly Anna, that's who this is. And so, yeah, for a while, like that was my little passion project on the side. I just was upstairs kind of like it, just playing around and making sounds. And the first album that I released of Olly Anna, or the only album that I released, is I think 11 songs, either 10 or 11 songs. And that's the one thing that I did that was 100% me. I, wrote, produced, mixed, did all that. And that felt really, really good just to,
Yes.
there are things that I look back when I listen to it now that I'm like, it's, obviously we're always going to be critical of ourselves, but I'm really proud that I did it. And, it got that project off its feet. And then now I have a lot of producers that reach out to me to work with me as Olly Anna. So I do it, which is why I'm not only doing it 100% now. I just feel like, there's producers that are more skilled than me that want to work with me. So I'm going to say yes.
Right. Okay, but you did that thing, man.
I did it. And I do still do it once in a while. I do. I did a couple of 100%ers this year. So yeah, we'll see.
That's awesome. That actually kind of leads into the next thing I wanted to ask you. I was going to say, what is the thought process behind developing all these different musical personas and artist names, and how did it kind of change or benefit your career?
That's a good question. Well, they kind of were created out of necessity, at least in my own mind. That's what my perception was, right? Like Rayelle, I was kind of a spin-off of Farmdale. So the band that I was in, Farmdale, was kind of, it was very rock, sometimes kind of punk rock. So when I first started Rayelle, I just kind of continued writing those types of songs, but as a solo artist. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of developed into more like dancey and pop. And Rayelle now kind of really has quite a range of stuff. Sometimes it's really soulful now and R&B-ish even. But that was how that project was born, was just me, needing a name to put it under. And my nickname was always El Ray, because I'm Lindsey Ray. And so my friends always called me El Ray, and El Ray was taken when I Googled it. So I just flipped it around and went, oh, Rayelle, that'll be a thing. And nobody had taken it. So I thought, okay, I'll be Rayelle. And then the Olly Anna thing came about the way I just explained, with that whole opportunity to write something. And then I was never really planning on releasing music as Lindsey Ray again, just because, I don't know, I guess it felt like something I did in my 20s, and it was such a singer-songwritery sound that I wasn't really interested in making for a long time. So I kind of thought I had put that to bed, and then I was wrong. So this year I ended up, sitting at the piano and writing some ballads. And even though they don't sound like the Lindsey Ray music I used to make, they still are very different than Rayelle and Olly Anna, because they're not as, Olly Anna's like a little bit more hip hop or poppy, and Rayelle's very pop. And this thing is just very singer-songwriter. I don't really know how else to explain it other than that, but it just felt different. So it made sense to release those songs as Lindsey Ray again. And now I'm juggling 3 projects, and it is kind of crazy. I love it, but, to answer your question, I don't know if it's necessarily benefited my career necessarily, unless you think about it in terms of I'm putting eggs in different baskets, right? So I'm not like betting all on this one thing. I enjoy it because it gives me the creative freedom to write anything I want, any genre, and I pretty much have a slot to put it under. So that's really nice. I don't have to like create a song and then go, oh, well, no one wants to hear this from me. Like if I start writing songs right now in the next couple of days, for example, that don't fit any of those, I'm totally willing to be a different person if I have to. But as of right now, I really do feel like I can file things under one of those 3, projects. So I will say that the truth is that the downside of it is that it's a lot to keep up with. 3 websites, 3 Instagrams, 3 projects that need photo shoots and all of that. So that's maybe the hard part. but I still think it's worth it, because at the end of the day, like I said, like for me, it's so much of what I do these days is about just the process and whether or not I'm enjoying myself. And I am. So even though it's a little bit more to take on, I am happy. So I'm going to keep doing it.
That's awesome. Lisa, do you have any other specific questions for Lindsey?
No. I mean, I have a million questions, but that's it for now.
The last thing I wanted to ask you, usually we leave it off with, what would be your biggest piece of advice for a young musician or band that's just starting out?
Well, to kind of reiterate what I've said already, I would say just have fun and explore and try things, experiment. I think there's something so beautiful about the beginning stages when nobody is expecting anything from you. You know, you're not already sort of established in any way that people are saying, oh, I want you to keep doing that thing. You're a blank canvas, and it's a wonderful place to be. So yeah, I would say just experiment and play with all kinds of different sounds, and just make sure that you know that there's nothing that's wrong. There's nothing that, even if you haven't heard anything like it before, that doesn't mean it's not viable or you know, valuable. It is. I mean, there's always going to be the people that create something totally new and become the trendsetters. And I think that's way cooler personally than trying to copycat some other band that you love. So I think just, yeah. And the only way you can really do that is to experiment. I mean, sometimes it's like, maybe you grab, you know, this and you put this on the mic and you're like, that's a cool sound. I don't know, maybe I'll mic that. I don't, you know, just like have fun and remember that that's what it's all about. It's art. You're not like solving any puzzle. You're just expressing yourself. And the more true to yourself you can be, like I said before, lyrically or whatever, the more it's going to connect with other people, because we all are very similar, really. We think we're all so different, but we're really not. We're so similar. Mm-hmm. So just, yeah, I think that's the best thing I could say. And then also just if you really, really love it, and you're passionate and it's what you want to do, just keep showing up and don't be discouraged, because there's going to be a million reasons to be discouraged. And just know that everybody at every level feels that, has moments of insecurity and feeling like they're not good enough. And you just have to keep going anyway. So if you can do that, I think you got a real shot.
Wow, Lindsey, thank you so much for chatting with us tonight. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. And there's so much great information and advice in there. So I know a lot of our viewers are going to find it super valuable. But thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. And also, I just want to say, if anybody, I offer this anytime I do one of these things. If anybody has any additional questions or wants to pick my brain about anything else, feel free to DM me on Instagram. My Lindsey Ray account is Lindsey Ray Ray Blue, LindseyRayRayBlue. So if you want to reach out to me, you can. I love helping and encouraging people. So don't be shy.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Lindsey.
Thank you. Oh man, it was so good to have you on here. It's getting a little bit emotional just listening to all your wisdom and just watching you be you. All right. Bye, Lindsey.